right? Okay, and so when we think about these high risk, high reward things that can really make a difference, that's why we need to thank all of you, because all of you pay taxes, right? You're paying your taxes. You are supporting scientists like me and the other people you've heard to try to work our butts off to try to solve these problems, right? That's what we're trying to do. Yeah. Okay, so I work with collaborators here in Central New York at SUNY Medical School at Syracuse University, but also around the world. There is a group of scientists just like me, hundreds here in Central New York alone, thousands in the state of New York, more than that across the world, and that's free exchange of ideas between us and them is one of the things that makes science possible and makes science great, right? And that's why the United States has a position of real power in the world due to people who want to come here to learn and do science, right? And we want that. That's where the breakthroughs come from. That's where the jobs come from. Okay, so when I told you the introduction, I said I got funding from places like the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health. And I just wanted to say for a moment, where does all that money we get in my group go? Where does it go? Well, it goes to support staff at Syracuse University, and so that's local jobs here. I have 10 scientists in my group, graduate students and postdoctoral students who are learning to do science like this, interdisciplinary science that I think can make real breakthroughs, and they have jobs here in Central New York. And they're from all over. Some are from Central New York, so a couple of my graduate students are from here in Central New York. They're learning the skills they need to have the jobs of the future, right? But also there's people from Oregon, from Germany, from Turkey, and the fact that those people want to come here to Central New York to learn how to help people is amazing and important, right? Okay? It's like running a small business. I care about my people, and my people work their butts off. They're in our university nights. They work weekends. They work a lot because they care about the things. They care about science, and they care about making things better, right? And that's really important. All right. So our next generation of scientists is going to be responsible for the discoveries of the future, right? 10, 20, 30 years from now, these young people that are working their butts off are the ones who are going to discover the next great thing. Okay, and when we talk about funding for science and how important it is, if some of the proposed funding cuts that are being proposed right now go through, and in fact they're already starting to hit some of them, then the number of brilliant young people in my group goes from 10 down to 8. And if it gets cut further, it goes down from there. And these people are people that are in your communities, they're your neighbors too, and they're going to be responsible for the best. So what I should say is I want to support my students and trainees to be the best they can, but I know that you want to support them too, because these are the best that we have, right? Yeah. Okay. So support these students, support your neighbors, support science.
Let's all thank Lisa again. That was great. Okay, next up, we have Dr. Jack Mono. We have an interdisciplinary social scientist with a PhD from the Maxwell School and professor in environmental studies at SUNY ESF. He is also a contributing scholar to SUNY ESF's Center for Native Peoples and the Environment and the Sklannon Great Law of Peace Center on Onondaga Lake. Professor Jack Mono is involved in very important research in sustainable development, ecological integrity, and the emerging environmental collaboration between indigenous peoples and their allies both in Central New York and throughout the world. Here to relay the words of Robin Kimmerer, Director of the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment, is Dr. Jack Mono.
Hello. So first, I would like to acknowledge that we are standing on the land of the Onondaga people. And you'll notice the Haudenosaunee flag is flying up there, letting us know where we are. And Robin Kimmerer, who's the director of the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment, has written a statement. She's in Washington delivering it right now. And she asked me to read it, so I'll be reading rather than speaking for her. And so I'm just going to begin with, as Indigenous scientists, agency professionals, tribal professionals, educators, traditional practitioners, family, youth, elders, and allies from Indigenous communities and homelands all over the living earth, we endorse and support the March for Science. As original peoples, we have long memories, centuries-old wisdom, and deep knowledge of this land and the importance of empirical scientific inquiry as fundamental to the well-being of people and planet. Let us remember that long before Western science came to these shores, there were indigenous scientists, native astronomers, agronomists, geneticists, ecologists, engineers, botanists, zoologists, watershed hydrologists, pharmacologists, physicians, and more, all engaged in the creation and application of knowledge which promoted the flourishing of both human societies and the beings with whom we share this planet. We give gratitude for all their contributions to knowledge. Native science supported indigenous culture, governance, and decision-making for a sustainable future. The same needs which bring us together today. As we endorse and support the March for Science, let us acknowledge that there are multiple ways of knowing that play an essential role in advancing knowledge for the health of all life. Science, as concept and process, is translatable into over 500 different indigenous languages in the United States and thousands worldwide. Western science is a powerful approach, but it is not the only one. Indigenous science provides a wealth of knowledge and a powerful alternative paradigm by which we understand the natural world and our relation to it. Embedded in cultural frameworks of respect, reciprocity, responsibility, and reverence for the earth, indigenous science lies within a worldview where knowledge is coupled to responsibility and human activity is aligned with ecological principles and natural law rather than against them. We need both ways of knowing if we are to advance knowledge and sustainability. We acknowledge and honor our ancestors and draw attention to the ways in which indigenous communities have been negatively impacted by the misguided use of Western scientific research and institutional power. Our communities have been used as research subjects, experienced environmental racism, extractive industries that harm our homelands, and have witnessed indigenous science and the rights of indigenous peoples dismissed by institutions of Western science. While indigenous science is an ancient and dynamic body of knowledge embedded in sophisticated cultural epistemologies, it has long been marginalized by the institutions of contemporary Western science. However, traditional knowledge is increasingly recognized as a source of concepts, models, philosophies, and practices which can inform the design of new sustainability solutions. It is both ancient and urgent. Indigenous science informs place-specific resource management and land care practices important for environmental health of tribal and federal lands. We require greater recognition and support for tribal consultation and participation in the co-management, protection, and restoration of our ancestral lands. Indigenous communities have partnered with Western science to address environmental justice, health disparities, and intergenerational trauma in our communities. We have championed innovation and technology in science, from agriculture to medicine. New ecological insights have been generated through sharing of indigenous science. Indigenous communities and Western science continue to promote diversity with STEM fields. Each year, indigenous peoples graduate with PhDs, MDs, MSs, and related degrees that benefit our collective societies. We also recognize and promote the advancement of culture bearers, elders, hunters, and gatherers who strengthen our communities through traditional practices. Our tribal communities need more culturally embedded scientists, and at the same time, institutions of Western science need more indigenous perspectives. The next generation of scientists needs to be well positioned for growing collaboration with indigenous science. Thus, we call for enhanced support for inclusion of indigenous science in mainstream education for the benefit of all. Yeah. We envision a productive symbiosis between indigenous and Western knowledges that serve our shared goals of sustainability for land and culture. This symbiosis requires mutual respect for the intellectual sovereignty of both indigenous and Western sciences. As members of the indigenous science community, we endorse and support the March for Science, and we encourage indigenous people and allies to participate in the National March in D.C. or a satellite march like in Syracuse. Let us engage the power of both indigenous and Western science on behalf of the living earth. Let our indigenous voices be heard. And I just want to mention that this coming year, the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment is instituting a new graduate program on indigenous science and Western science together. So we're practicing what we're preaching. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jack. That was wonderful. Okay, so I am about to introduce our final speaker of the day, and that's going to end the first half of our rally, okay? But first, I want to do one more chant, okay? Are we ready to do one more chant? All right. Okay, so when I say Syracuse kids want, you're going to say facts at school, okay? All right, let's do this. Syracuse kids want. Facts at school. Syracuse kids want. Facts at school. Syracuse kids want. Facts at school. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Now, in line with that chant is our next and final speaker. We have Professor Marvin Druger. That's right. We have here not only a scientist, but a tremendous science educator. Marvin Druger has taught more than 45,000 students over his teaching career, mostly through the Intro Bio course at SU for 47 years. He was president of 3 international science education organizations. That's the NSTA, the SCST, and what is now the ASTE. He was also chair and secretary of the education section of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. That's right, that's the AAAS. Maybe we've heard of it. He officially retired from SU in 2014, and he is now a professor emeritus of biology and science education. He gives campus tours, directs 2 science programs, presents a regular science program on WAER 88.3 called Science on the Radio, writes columns for 55 Plus magazine, writes children's books, and he does even more than that he would be glad to tell you about if you ask him. Please, everybody, put your hands together for Professor Marvin Druger.
Well, it's great to be here, and it's great to know that so many of my former students are also here. When I was asked to talk at this event, I was told I had 3 minutes. I said that's impossible. I've taught these 45,000 students over a period of 50 years, and I couldn't possibly condense my talk into 3 minutes. So they told me I could have 5 minutes. Being the last speaker is not easy. Many great comments have already been made, and as I was listening, I was thinking, what's left to say? But I'll try to add my thoughts anyhow. We live in a highly technological world, obviously, where the need for science education seems obvious. People have to know and appreciate science in order to support it. Not knowing about and not supporting science and science education is detrimental to the future of humankind. Not supporting science and science education means that important discoveries may not be made in the future. Support for science has led to detecting gravitational waves that give scientists a new way of studying the universe. And of course, Syracuse University scientists were involved in making that discovery. Support for science has enabled scientists to identify all of the genes in the human cell, the human genome. And scientists have developed technologies such as CRISPR, where genes can be precisely edited. Countless drugs and new approaches to human illnesses are ongoing achievements of support for science and technology. Techniques for measuring climate change have been the product of scientific investigation, and scientists have been able to measure global surface temperatures and have observed the increases in temperature during the years since industrialization from the production of the so-called greenhouse gases that we all know about that trap the heat like a blanket. Each year for the past several years, there have been record high average global temperatures. The rising global temperatures are associated with a decline of sea ice in the Arctic, and ice now covers about 40% less territory than in the 1970s. Who says climate change is a hoax? I can't imagine what discoveries will not be made if science and science education don't get increasing and continuing support. We not only have to support the education of prospective scientists, but we need to support the science education of non-scientists so that they become supporters of science and scientists. Do we need support for special science programs for talented students? For many years, I've organized and directed science enrichment programs for talented high school students. There's one going on right now where my son is talking to a group of high school students about the world of vision. I once did a radio interview with Isidore Rabi, who's passed away, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, about the need for special science programs for talented students. I said that many people don't believe in the value of such programs. They argue that these bright students will make it on their own anyhow, without special science programs. Why waste the money? He replied that such programs are very important. His comment was, if we didn't, and this is a quote, if we didn't offer these special science programs, these talented youngsters could become bright gangsters instead of bright scientists. An interesting point. Nobody's mentioned science teachers. Science teachers are at the core of our scientific future. There's Sally over there, many others who I know out here who are science teachers. They deserve special attention and support. My view is that we should try our best to enrich the lives of prospective science teachers and offer them all sorts of diverse experiences, including an overseas experience. An enriched teacher has a rich repertoire to bring to students. Also, we should equip science teachers with all possible teaching techniques and then turn them loose. Good teachers have their own standards and should be encouraged to use whatever techniques suit them best as individuals. We need to respect and encourage the unique creativity of teachers and not impose standardized approaches for all. Modern science education encourages hands-on activities. I recall when Paul Brandwine, a famous science educator, gave a lecture on why teachers should not lecture. It was a brilliant lecture that I still remember. This lecture made me realize that teachers need to find their own strengths and strategies for teaching, and not be obliged to follow a universal script for how to teach science. I'd rather hear a great lecture from someone who lectures well than have a hands-on lesson from that same person who doesn't handle hands-on lessons well. Teaching science is a complicated and important process, and which techniques are used depend upon many factors, such as the age of the students, their backgrounds, the size of the class, the topic, the strengths of the teacher, and even the mood of the class and the weather. It all depends. And so, science teachers not only have to teach the content and process of science, but they have to motivate students about science. Students have come to me and said, "I can't learn science, it's too hard." What they're really telling me is that, for whatever reasons, they're not really interested in learning science. I tell them that they can learn anything they want to learn if they really want to learn it. I'll just add one other thing. When I was at the National Science Foundation, I tried to organize a session for congressmen to try to introduce them to what's going on in science. The aides showed up, not the congressman. A science teacher colleague once said to me, "Our job as science teachers is to inform and motivate students, but if we motivate them, they inform themselves." What a great thought for promoting science education. Well, I think I've exhausted my 5 minutes. I enjoyed hearing the other speakers. I commend the organizers of this important rally for science and science education. And I'll have to suppress my desire to talk for a few more hours. And since this is a rally and a march for science, I'll end my presentation with a sign that I constructed. I did it myself. And so, let us all support science and science education. Thank you.
All right, let's thank Marvin again. Okay, so we are now halfway through our program. We're halfway through the rally. And before we move on, I just want everybody, let's give a round of applause for all the speakers again. Thank you all for coming out and sharing your words. And I also quickly do want to point out that if you're here this weekend, well, you might be interested in something next weekend. There's a climate march Saturday at 11 a.m. in Franklin Square. Look out for that if you care about climate, okay? Yes. And if you didn't get one of these stickers, look for one of the people handing them out.